When a committee in London draws a line on a map, a supertanker in the Indian Ocean can become an uninsurable ghost, its journey illegal, its cargo stranded. That's not a hypothetical. It's the daily power of the Joint War Committee, a private body of Lloyd's and Insurance Association representatives that designates listed areas for war risks. A vote in a London boardroom can blockade sea routes more effectively than any navy, yet almost nobody outside shipping knows it exists. 3,000 years ago, on the island of Rhodes, seaborne merchants faced a brutal choice: throw cargo overboard to save the ship, or let everyone drown. They created a rule: the loss would be shared by all whose property was saved. This was general average, the root code of all insurance, written into the DNA of maritime law. That principle sustained shipping for centuries, and by the late 1600s it had migrated to a coffeehouse on Tower Street, London. Edward Lloyd's establishment became a nerve center where ship captains, owners, and underwriters haggled over risk. A scribbled note on a slip of paper could back a voyage to the Spice Islands, spreading the peril among a syndicate of wealthy men. That coffeehouse evolved into Lloyd's of London, the world's first marine insurance market, a private club that would one day write the rulebook for global conflict at sea. In 1906, the British Parliament codified centuries of maritime case law into a single statute, the Marine Insurance Act. It turned London into the world's legal anchor for shipping. The standard SG form policy, tested through at least 2 centuries of judicial precedent, survived until 1991 when it was finally replaced by the MAR 91 form, a document born in the age of sail that still governs supertankers. Shipowners, meanwhile, formed mutual clubs to cover the 1/4 of third-party liability that standard policies excluded: oil spills, nuclear contamination. These protection and indemnity clubs still exist, pooling risk among competitors. Together, Lloyd's and these clubs concentrated underwriting power in a few square miles of the city. From that concentration emerged the Joint War Committee, representatives of Lloyd's and the International Underwriting Association, who began drawing boundaries beyond which ordinary insurance simply ceased to exist. Here's how the blockade works. The JWC issues a list of listed areas, geographic coordinates where hull war, piracy, and terrorism perils are deemed elevated. In June 2013, that list included the Indian Ocean bounded north by 15 degrees north, west by the Gulf of Oman at 58 degrees east, east by 78 degrees east, and south all the way to 12 degrees south, a box the size of a continent. Enter it without war risk cover and your hull insurance is void. But the committee isn't alone. The International Bargaining Forum, another London body, labels zones as warlike operations, high risk, or extended risk. Each label triggers mandatory danger bonuses for seafarers, adding tens of thousands of dollars to a vessel's running cost. A line on a map, drawn by unelected underwriters, suddenly makes a trade route economically impassable. No navy fires a shot, no parliament votes. Yet no cargo owner will send a ship through waters where Lloyd's won't write a policy. This is economic warfare by spreadsheet. When insurance becomes a weapon, the shadow fleet becomes the shield. By October 2023, the International Maritime Organization estimated that between 300 and 600 tankers, mostly aging, poorly maintained, with murky ownership, were operating outside the legitimate insurance system. These dark ships switch off their AIS transponders, perform midnight ship-to-ship transfers on the high seas, and hop between flags from Cameroon to Cook Islands, laundering their very identity. They exploit a flaw in the IMO ship numbering system, making one vessel appear as several. The IMO itself warned urgently in 2013 that such high-risk transfers undermine maritime safety, environmental protection, and all liability frameworks. Yet the more the JWC extends its red lines, the more this parallel universe expands. A Panama flag tanker carrying Russian oil can disappear south of Oman, only to re-emerge 3 days later with a new name, fresh paint, and no insurance at all. The world tried to wrestle back control. In 2012, the UN Security Council renewed for 1 year the authorization for states to fight piracy off Somalia. In December that year, the Contact Group on Piracy met at UN headquarters, noting that 1,179 individuals were being prosecuted or had been prosecuted in 21 countries worldwide. But legal nets woven for Somali skiffs could not snag the Shadow Fleet's structural subversion. Meanwhile, the JWC's list began bleeding across the globe. The Red Sea erupted with anti-ship missiles, the Persian Gulf saw tanker seizures, the Black Sea became a no-man's sea after the invasion of Ukraine. Multiple listed areas now overlap, creating corridors of uninsurability that stretch from Suez to the Strait of Hormuz to Odessa. The committee that once calmly added a single rectangle in the Indian Ocean now faces a map on fire. Underwriters are pulling back, war risk premiums have soared, and the very system designed to spread risk is concentrating it into a handful of London boardroom votes each month. Today, the invisible blockade has become too effective. A committee that answers only to insurers now determines which economies get grain, fuel, and rare minerals. No parliament voted, no election ratified. Yet the Joint War Committee's room in Lime Street holds more immediate economic power than many foreign ministries. But the system is buckling. Simultaneous war risk zones have exhausted the pool of capital willing to underwrite those perils. The Dark Fleet steps into the void, its uninsured tankers move staggering volumes of oil through waters the London market has abandoned. These grey ships carry no P&I club cover. If one spills, there is no mutual fund to clean it up. The money that once flowed through Lloyd's Marble Hall now moves through shell companies in Dubai and vessels with no insurance at all, creating the greatest environmental time bomb on the seas. The architecture that started in a coffee house has become a private blockade, and it is quietly imploding under its own weight. The private committee with no democratic mandate now decides which nations receive grain. But the premiums that used to flow through Lloyd's are now financing the very shadow fleet it tried to kill. The blockade has become a boomerang. Somewhere in the Persian Gulf, an uninsured tanker with a rusted hull carries a black cargo toward a refinery, asking no committee for permission, and leaving no insurance behind when something goes wrong.